Art. First thing first, I needed to define an art style that would set me apart from the typical indie look. I don't see a lot of indie games going for a realistic look with PBR, so I went with that. And if you're wondering what PBR is, it's a way to render objects realistically. The gist of it is to manipulate how light reflects on 3D surface with additional textures. I will talk about this nerd shit later in the video. But only using PBR is not enough. I think so. I still needed something that would set me apart from the realistic look, because that's also very crowded as a market. So I invented my own art style with the complicated process of picking pretty games that I like and mixing the art direction. So I ended up with this list of inspiration for the art style. Monument Valley, Journey, Abzu, and Children of Light are my main inspiration for the bold choice of color and lighting. I mean, look at this. Why would you not put this beautiful lighting into your game? I hate this game, but Valorant for the textures, aka the equivalent of the Ghibli art style for the textures, because I like the hand-painted style a lot. And I also don't want to end up dead trying to recreate the Mona Lisa for every textures. So that's why I'm using more hand-painted look to cut some corners. And everything will be glued together with a bunch of sci-fi influences like Portal and Halo, specifically for the architecture. Speaking of architecture, dams are also a big source of inspiration because they represent that architectural design pretty well, and they are also very big. So no wonder the main areas of the game will take place in a dam facility. So enough about this high concept talk, let's just actually put this into practice and I'll show you the process of making an asset for the game. So with the guidance of Hugo's concept, I started to model all of the variation for the tile in Blender with a straight, curved, budget, and inward tile. That way I can assemble them just like puzzle pieces. With that in place, I have a lot of configuration for not a lot of meshes. After that's done and ready, I made two textures in Substance Designer for making the tileable textures. Over here, we have our typical PBR output: normal map, albedo, ambient occlusion, metallic, and most important of all, roughness map, since it controls the reflectiveness of the 3D surface. Why is it important? Well, it allows me to reveal certain patterns on the object depending on the view of the camera and lights, kinda like Etherborn. But I think that they use some special wizard reshaders to pull that off. So obviously I'm not going to use that trick on everything since it's going to produce too much visual noise. Keep in mind that not all of the assets are made that way. For example, I used Substance Painter to texture the magnets in a painterly look. After a bit of tweaking, here's the result for the two materials that I can easily put on the tiles, and I think they came out great. Keep in mind that this is all subject to change, and these are probably not going to be the final assets. And believe it or not, these are the only two models that I textured so far. For the rest of the skybox/environment, I'm not quite sure if I want to texture all of them since it's going to take a lot of time. Speaking of environment, yo, is that another segue? What? But before I talk about environment, I think it will be more appropriate to talk about the story first. So yeah, I don't have a story. Okay, I do have a story, but it's very boring. So here's my elevator pitch. You play as a pair of worker magnets that are suddenly awakened, and they must reconnect the underground facility power grid through puzzles and discover what happened to their home. With this simple premise in mind, I know for a fact that I won't need dialogues for the game, so a big part of the story will be told through the environment. I am a big fan of environmental storytelling. It can tell you a lot about the world without disrupting the flow of the game. It can also add a lot of ambiguity and mystery since it can be an unexplicit way to do storytelling. For those reasons, I think that covering the story through environment will be a perfect fit for Amant. The environment, which takes 50% of the screen, will play an important role for the story, but it will be very time-consuming to make, even though it has no gameplay benefits. But that doesn't mean that I won't be using some sneaky tricks to fool the average bonobo into thinking that there's actual details everywhere. For example, the background will have a depth of field effect most of the time, in order to put more focus on the gameplay area, but I can also get away with less detail in the environment. I started blocking out the environment in Blender with the help of this handy book, 101 Things I Learned in Architecture School. It contains general tips on architecture which helped me when designing the environment for the game. For example, number 10, our experience of space is strongly influenced by how we arrive in it. It gave me the idea to start the game in an enclosed space so that I can transition into the main area of the game. It will have a bigger impact on its bigness, since we came from a smaller area. Also, the game is going to be played non-linearly, meaning that there are going to be many diverging paths to choose from. So I put landmarks to help players orient themselves inside the facility. You will always be able to see the big pit, the big door, and the big window. And when all of this done, the blocking is going to change because I'm not happy with the end result. So for the next iteration, I will need to think more about the sense of place while having the design interesting from the point of view of the game. I will also need to redo the scaling of it, but I'm keeping the main landmarks for now. Okay, thanks for watching my yearly video update. I swear to God, it's gonna be like 2 videos this year, so stay tuned. And if you want more update on the game, I have a Twitter and I also add a new Discord, so feel free to follow.